Awesome. Welcome, everyone. We're going to give everyone a couple minutes to join in before we get started. If you have any questions today, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm Mallory Mullen with Goodshuffle Pro, and joining me today is Cam Petty from Render Events Company, and we'll be having a candid conversation about how Cam has grown her business into a 7-figure business, and Goodshuffle Pro has been helping pave the way with that growth. So we're looking forward to having you. Hang tight and we'll kick things off here in a couple minutes. All right, looks like some folks are trickling into the room. We're so excited to have everyone here joining us. Kim, as we get started, I would love to just kind of open up with some kind of fun questions about like what gets you out of bed every morning? Like, how did you start this business? How did this become your calling and your passion? Tell us a little bit about how Render has grown.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I'm so excited to be here. Just a little bit about myself. I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I'm a mom of 2 cute little babes. They're amazing. They're at school right now, so that's super helpful. And then I also have a golden retriever pup named Rush after the 80s rock band. So if that tells you anything about me at all. I'm also a normal person, just living in an apartment, driving a normal car, taking kids to school in the morning, picking them up in the afternoon, making dinner at home, sometimes going out to like Cece's Pizza, which in Texas is like a buffet place. So just a normal person. I'm not anything different than all of you guys here. Some things that get me out of bed every morning is, first of all, having something to look forward to always. So something that might be like a travel plan that you have coming up, or a big goal in your business, or something like the holidays coming up literally in just a few weeks. And we're in the middle of the holidays. We just had Thanksgiving last week. So just having something that you're looking forward to is really helpful as you get prepared to get out of your bed every day and driving to work and doing the mundane thing that you guys do every single day, just like myself, and having something to look forward to. Last week I got to go to Breckenridge, which was super fun, and it was something that I was looking forward to for weeks on end to come to. And so sometimes it helps the weeks go by faster. It makes the mundane work just a little bit more sweet because you have somewhere you're going soon. And so just having something to look forward to. Also having what is called a joy list. So I've talked about this on Clubhouse when it was a hot trend for like 2 minutes. And then we've talked about our podcast, we've talked about it on Instagram Live and such, but a joy list is just simply something that sparks joy. It brings happiness to you, and it can be something super simple. And in fact, it needs to be something super simple that's achievable and you can pick up and do right away. Some examples of what is on my joy list is taking a hot bath at night. So that's something that's achievable. I can plan to do that tonight even if I wanted to. Driving with my windows down with some fun music blaring. Usually it's a Beyonce or something like that. Granted, here in Texas, it's kind of hard to do that anytime. You do have to time it right with the weather. It can't be raining, obviously. And then, when it's 100,000 degrees outside or freezing cold, it's hard to do that as well. But that's on my joy list. Having a really, really good chai tea latte is really good. I'm kind of a chai tea latte snob. I really like a good one. It can't be a crappy one. Starbucks does not have the best chai tea lattes, but there are a few local places here in DFW that I love. Just random things that bring you joy specifically. You might not love a chai tea latte, so that shouldn't be on your list if you don't love a chai tea latte, but having a quick list that you remember or even write down on your phone that you can easily access at any point, it's going to help you get out of bed, and it's going to help give you that spark at that 3 p.m. time that you're a little bit down. You're like, just need to get through the day. The coffee's worn off. you're getting ready to pick up kids, you're getting ready to do dinner plans, and you just need a little pick me up, that joy list is a great option without over caffeinating yourself before you have to get in bed that evening. And then just honestly coming back to the why for business. Why are you in this business? What is your ultimate goal with this business? And why do you have it? Is it because you want the freedom to go to your kid's soccer game on Saturday? Is it because you have a joy for leading people and that brings you joy? And so come back to your why and remember your why often and write it down somewhere. Or if you are a friend of mine in the Richland area, she has literally tattooed on her wrist, you might know her, Morgan Montgomery, tattooed on her list different lounge chairs on her because she loves what she does. And so you might tattoo it on yourself because of your why. You might have it as a place in your office that's like written on the walls, or you might just have it on your phone. Like on my phone, let me just show you real quick. You might be able to see it on here. Like on my background, it says render at the very top. So it's one of the pages on my phone. And so I'm constantly remembering render. And why render? It's because of the definition of bringing something from its current state and making it better. And so just remember it, however it works for you. It might be a tattoo on the wrist, or maybe on the neck, or maybe on your forehead. I don't care. But come back to your why for business. It's going to get you out of bed and give you that reason for going every single day. There's been, gosh, we've all been through so much in 2020 and 2021. And there was a moment of time that I literally took the entire month off from working because I physically, emotionally, mentally, I could not be here. I could not be present because of a really big thing that happened in my life last year, personally. And I had to literally take the entire month off. I lost my why. I was not motivated. I really didn't want to come to work, honestly. Anytime I was here, I felt the like weight of overwhelm being here because I was dealing with such a big thing in my personal life. And I was able to take that time off. And just so you know, you're not alone if you lose your why, or if you get to a place where you're like, I just really don't want to do this anymore. You're burnt out. I get it. I've been there. I was there just a few months ago. And so coming back to that why and coming back to the real reason that you want to do this is super important.
I love how you talk about making those reminders so accessible, right? Like something that comes front to mind for me is just how much decision fatigue this last year has brought, right? And so, sometimes, right, it's so easy when you're feeling that overwhelmed or you're getting bogged down and it's like, oh, why am I doing this? You don't want to have to think about it, right? And so your joy list, being able to have that thing that it's not something that you have to think about. I actually have a fishbowl in my room where I have moments of joy on my
I love that. That's an awesome idea.
And if I need to pick me up, I don't even have to think about it. I just pick it up out of the jar and it's already made kind of fun for me, so that it's truly usually it's screen free time, and
right.
Something that's kind of grounding and putting me, back in my body. So I love that suggestion.
Yeah. Well, then going back to the decision feed, you already have made those decisions on what's your joy list. You don't have to sit there and think I don't know what's going to bring me joy right now.
Right. Yeah. And that's obviously a really small thing for your personal life, but I know you did an episode of If I Made, which was how to survive uncertainty for small businesses and rental companies in the wedding industry. Yes. And we've all been through a lot in the last couple of years. And so what are some of the things that you have done that you're now taking with you into this new chaos, right, of busyness again? Yes. You and I were talking about that before getting started, to kind of be the most efficient and maximize your time in a way that's not fatiguing or exhausting or wearing at you.
Right, of course. And well, I also want to make sure that people hear me that we are in a crazy season of last minute bookings, and honestly, some of our highest revenue producing months we've ever had in business. But I do know that there's a lot of people who are still in the thick of rescheduling and canceling and all of that. There are plenty areas of the world, of the country, that still can't do events like we can here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex because of government and because of rules and regulations and all the things. And so while I might talk about us being in a really busy season, it's something to definitely start putting into practice, because you will be busy again. I promise you it's coming. Like, we are feeling it, it's coming. So something that is really helping us right now, we were talking, like you said earlier, we are getting the last minute orders like no one's business. I mean, it is crazy busy and crazy last minute that we're having right now. And so really creating routines, not only in your business, but in your physical, your mental, your emotional, having some sort of a routine that you can come back to. Because let me tell you right now, it is crazy bonkers. And if it weren't for the morning and evening routines that I've had in place for the last few years, I would be exhausted. And yes, I might be exhausted because I'm getting less sleep and not as many workouts in and all of that right now, because we're so busy. However, I lean on some of those routines that I've had and routines here at the office, because we are busy. And so you have to have something to come back to. If you just like keep going on this crazy train, it's never going to stop even when you get crazy. And so creating those routines is super, super important.
My brain has this pull of like, the type A in me and type B in me.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I fought routines because I felt like, oh, it's not allowing me to be like creative and I can't, like do things last minute and, live my freest life. And it wasn't until I really started getting into a routine that I realized, okay, there are some things that I have to do every day, every month, every week, whatever it is. And similar to the joy list, right? If I can free up my time and my brain space and get into a routine in those areas, that actually frees up all of this runway to be like more creative and have more of a mental capacity to talk with clients more in depth, to have additional patience. And so when you talk about creating some of your business routines, has Goodshuffle Pro like played a role in that? And what kind of freedom has that allowed you in other areas of your business?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, we've been with multiple softwares in the past because we've been in business for so long. And so being with Goodshuffle Pro specifically, it really allows us to be able to book that business during business hours and allow our clients to do whatever they need to do when we're not working. And so I don't have to play the game of, here, let me send you the contract. You send the contract back. Okay, what about payment? Okay, send the payment back, and have this constant communication back and forth. It's super clear to our clients. And so Goodshuffle Pro makes it easy for us to do that. Over the Thanksgiving break, we took off internally for sure Thursday and Friday. I also took off Wednesday and Saturday and Sunday, and so did some of our staff as well. And there was a ton of business that booked during that time because other people didn't have to work. Other people were focusing on their personal things, like booking their wedding vendors and booking their rental companies and all of that. And you don't necessarily have to be working for that revenue to come in and for those businesses to be booking with you, because you've already done the groundwork. You've already given them the tools that they need to do. And then it's just a touch of their fingertips, literally from their phone if they want to, that they can figure that out and do it all without you having to be there to babysit them and walk them through the process. Certainly there's clients that still have to be babysat and walked through the process, but we can find the ways to really unplug and come back to our why and come back to a sense of our own person, because Goodshuffle Pro gives us the ability to do that.
It's all about creating that ease whenever possible, right? I talked to some folks who were like, well, I've got to handhold every single client and I've got to talk to every client. And, it just in this day and age gives me a little bit of pause, right? Because I think actually part of your service as a business, by not requiring handholding, can really actually make people want to do business with you more, because you've set this expectation of how simple it's going to be.
Right. Well, and for those companies that have been around for 20, 30 years that have typically done the hand holding, while that may have been really good 10, 20 years ago, nowadays, just look at your normal personal use of your phone. Are you constantly being on the phone with people, or are you texting more often than you were 10, 15 years ago compared to now? I'm going to guess that you're likely texting or looking on social media to catch up with people, or looking in your email more than you're picking up the phone and chit-chatting with a friend, right? I know I am for sure. I've had a phone for plenty of years, and 10, 15 years ago, cool. Yeah, it was cool to text because it was newer and it was easier to access because we had better phones at that time. now we have better phones now, but we had phones that we could text, but it was likely that I'm going to pick up the phone and call because that was the norm back then. It was normal to handheld and to really foster those relationships with friends and family and all of that. Not that we shouldn't today, but there was just more phone calls and walking people through things 10, 15 years ago than there is now. People would rather be left alone and let them just do their thing because we're tech savvy, we're more tech savvy, and technology just evolves all the time. And so being on your phone, just look at your personal life. You're probably on your phone more often on text, email, social media than you were 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. It's, I think sometimes because technology is sometimes seen as like, oh, like it's in some ways making us less connected, or it's removing that personal touch. There's a little bit of that hesitancy of like, oh, tech is like making my business less personal, right? But I think to your point, everyone is struggling with how many minutes are in their day. And so while the relationships or the time from like quote to contract is shrinking, right? The quicker you can respond, you can actually build some stronger relationships that way, with fewer connections, which is actually great.
Yeah, of course. And I talk about this in our sales training, which we actually have a podcast episode coming out soon, all about sales training for rental companies. So check that out in a couple weeks. But I talk about this bridge of trust that our clients have to cross before they can book with us. And part of that trust bridge could be the timing of your communication. And the quicker you can get back to them, the quicker that they are apt to book with you. Also, picking up the phone and calling them is very important. So you can show your care and nurturing and loving for your clients. And so those are really important, but also getting back to them really quickly. Like that is super important. And it's hard to pick up the phone, call them, wait for a phone call back, play phone tag every 2 seconds, and still be not sending them a quote. Right?
Yeah.
And so if we can cross this bridge by giving them the information that they're looking for when they submitted the quote, either a couple hours ago or a couple days ago, quicker you can get that information to them, the quicker you're going to overcome that trust bridge that every client has to cross with you before they book with you.
I love that analogy of that like bridge and getting to the other side. And every time we talk, I'm always struck with how like natural this kind of philosophy seems to come with you as a businesswoman. And you were a newbie business owner at one point. Like, what has this evolution looked like for you? Because from an outsider's perspective, it has been done with grace and ease and seamlessness. And certainly, I would assume for most business owners, that's not the case. So walk us through some of your like tips there of navigating that growth. And, if you could tell your younger self a few things now, knowing what you know now, what would that look like?
Yeah, man, we have grown substantially, especially over the last 5 or 6 years. I've been in business actually since 2010 when I started my wedding planning business, which then evolved into rentals, which now involves floral and custom design. We've had different evolving doors with our business. And that's come through a lot of failures and a lot of mistakes that you may not have seen from the outside looking in. And that was purposeful. We didn't want you to see all those things, but every business goes through it. And so I still to this day have people say, oh my gosh, you're such an overnight success. I'm like, no, I'm a 10-year work in progress. Like this is not where it ends. Where our company is right now is not the ending point. It's not the like peaking here and sustaining. Like we're always going to keep growing and we're always going to be becoming a better version of ourselves. In fact, in our core values, if you go to the website for our business, you'll see all of our core values there. And one of them is being better than yesterday. And our only competition is ourselves. And we want to become a better version of ourselves every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year. And so we do have big goals in place, but those goals compact on top of each other. So my goals today for my business for next year are 100% different than they were 5 years ago. They're 100% different than they were last year because we learn more and we know more the more that we're in business and the more failures that we have. Yes, it may have looked like things were done with grace and a lot of perfection in our business. But let me tell you right now, there is not a lot of perfection in the business. There's a lot of failures and mistakes that were overcome because of planning ahead and because of being in business and having the tools and processes to do so. I didn't start having like our SOPs and our softwares. I didn't have my first software for a rental company until like 2015.
Oh, wow.
5 years into my business, I did not have software. Literally, I used Excel spreadsheets to book all of my clients. Like I was there, I did not have software, mainly because it wasn't available. Like there was no software. The software for rental companies was either like the dinosaur age and did not work very well, or you had to have a person come out, install it on your computers. It was not cloud-based, it was big and chunky and just not easy to use, or it wasn't existing. And so we had to use the best we could. And so there was a lot of things that you don't see in business, just like there's a lot of things with Target. There's a lot of things with other brands that you admire that it looks like a seamless process, that it certainly is not seamless. And so know when you look into our business, it's not all fun and games and all perfect 100% of the time. We just have grown and edit the way that we do business over and over and over. Literally week after week, we will update something in the business based on what we know, and we learn and become better than yesterday, week over week. Like literally in our team meetings, which we had our team meeting today instead of Monday because we had events yesterday and we didn't have time to do our meeting yesterday. But every Monday, typically, we do a team meeting and we talk about all the events that happened last week. And we go through and we say what went well on these events and what didn't go so well that needs improvement. And it could be communication issues. It could be timing issues, like we didn't get the right time, or we got the right time, it just wasn't somewhere something was off, or it could be the product was damaged, or it could be that the loading dock was not what we were expecting it to be, or something goes wrong on almost every order, right? There's not very often that you have a perfect order every single time. There's always something. Weather could have something to do with it. And so we go through every single event, and we, as collectively as a team of 4 to 6 people on our team, depending on the week and what events are happening and who's out of the office and all of that, we all collectively put our heads together and figure out what went wrong. How can we overcome this? And so, for example, last week, I think today we did 2 weeks because we were off last week. But one of the events had something like the communication, like the venue was not open at a certain time, but the planner told us to get there before the opening of the venue. And so there was a lapse of communication there. And so we're like, all right, how do we overcome that in the future? Well, let's make sure that we know what time we can get in there, so that in the future, when we say, hey, what time do you want us to show up? And they say 10 a.m., but the venue doesn't open till 1, we can preemptively already say, hey, I know that venue doesn't open till 1. So how about we come at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whatever time works better for them. And so that's what I mean by we become a better version of ourselves every single day, every single week, every single month and year, and it compacts on each other. And so people who are newer to business, or maybe within their first 3 to 5 years of business, your business is going to look different to you right now than it did for me at that time. Because one, I didn't have webinars to watch. I didn't have an online course to watch. I didn't have podcasts to listen to. And I didn't have other people to kind of show me the ways. And so part of that, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, is we've put together those options for you. We have a podcast that's for rental companies. We have an online course for rental companies. We have softwares and systems and SOPs and templates to sell you. Not because we want to make a bunch of money, but we want to help our industry, because our industry, the more that we level up, the more that the industry levels up as a whole. And no one else has those templates out there. So
I admire your ability to share not only your lessons won or lessons earned, just kind of in a platform like this, but to the point of your coursework. And I think you pretty blatantly lay out business plans for people.
You literally can take the course and start a business and be successful in your first year of being in business.
How have you overcome that scarcity mindset, right? Like, I think a lot of folks in the industry are like, well, I can't collaborate, or, it's just me. Like, I don't want anything to do with that company over there. There's not enough business to go around. And, no matter what season we've been in, right? whether times have been slow or really busy, I encounter a lot of business owners like that. So did you experience that as a new business owner? And like, how has that shifted for you over time?
Yeah, of course. Well, living in a big metroplex like Dallas Fort Worth, there is over 30 different rental companies just in my area. Like that's a lot of rental companies, and especially for this big of an area. And I will tell you, we've never had an issue not booking business. We've never had a point where like begging for business other than 2020, which everyone was begging for business in 2020. But we've never gotten to a point where we're like, there's so much business, but we're not getting any because there's so many people doing the same thing as us. You are different because you have a different business model, you have a different way of doing things, and you have different inventory that sets you apart. Yes, you might have overlap with other companies that have something similar or the exact same piece as you, but you also collectively bring a whole nother thing than somebody else does right in your same market. And as far as the education that we put out, I had so many people, including my own team members, that were like, I think we're sharing a little too much. Like, I think you're telling them everything. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Like, the point is to share people and share what we do because we want the industry to level up. We want people to make more money. We want people to have bigger businesses so that not only they make a lot of money or they seem super successful, but they can give back to their community, give back to their teams, and provide a life for not only themselves, but for their teams that they can't imagine or can't find anywhere else. That's the point of being in business and sharing that with people. And there's been so many people who are like, aren't you scared that they're going to take your trade secrets? I'm like, no, I want them to have my trade secrets because I want them to be a better version of themselves and elevate this business, elevate this whole industry, because you have the companies, which I know that you've seen as well, the companies that are charging way too low and not having the same quality of product and service and all of that, who the same clients that are looking at us are looking at those companies and looking at us that have very high prices, and they're thinking we're the same company. And so if I can teach that other company to level up and to show themselves as a better business and have the quality and have the product and have the knowledge to be at the same level, then the industry is going to be raised, right? Our clients are going to have better experience. The events industry as a whole is going to have a better experience. And so, yes, there might be people who are like, I don't want to share my pricing on my website, or I don't want to send everyone a quote because there's going to be people who are ghosting me and just asking for a quote to price shop me. Yeah, that might happen. And yeah, there's probably people who will come and shop your prices if they're online. But the amount of people who can book you because they know and they can assume how much they're going to have to charge or have to pay you, the amount of business you're going to book because of that is going to be really important. So I would say there's not really a ton of scarcity because it's always going to be business.
Yeah. It goes back to kind of your point, right? Like of creating that ease for the client, right?
Mhm.
Like by creating a company and a brand that whether you're working with other vendors or working with an end client, you are attracting clients who want to do, business with you. You're making it easy, you're friendly, you've got this like well-established brand. I was surprised to find out how small but mighty your team is. I think again, like outside looking in, right? It looks like, man, they've got dozens of people on payroll and they're this mega operation. Yet I think you've grown in a really lean way, especially over the, influx of the last few years. So how have you navigated those changes and keeping that business flowing in?
Yeah, of course. Well, I think it goes back to training and the softwares and the systems you have. If you don't have SOPs, if you don't have softwares, if you don't have a way that you do the thing that you do, then of course you're going to have more people to help you because you're not going to be able to do it all if you're doing so many events. Like we do anywhere from, well, this year and last year is different, but we do typically anywhere from like 400 to 500 events a year. And those events are pretty large events. And so that's a lot for a small team. And yes, it might be a small team. And yes, it would be nice to have 12 people working on the business for sure. But something that I teach in our podcast and in our softwares and in our online course and all that is make sure your expenses are being balanced across your revenue. So if your revenue is not bringing in the type of revenue that you need to have a high expense, which one of the biggest expense is payroll, then you can't have a lot of people. And so how can you use your team in the ways that they are capable and they are talented to use, and how can you use them the best way possible, in the most efficient way possible? And that goes back to having an awesome software like Goodshuffle Pro and having SOPs. Those are the two, like, if I could give you a magic secret sauce to business, like one thing that you should do, well, two things you should do is have an awesome software like Goodshuffle Pro and have SOPs. An SOP, for those of you who don't know it, is a standard operating procedure. It's the step-by-step way that you do the thing that you do. So if there's a way that you answer emails, have an SOP for that. If there is a way that you load a truck, SOP. If there is a way that you take an inquiry to the booking process, and there's some emails and phone calls and a follow-up process, needs an SOP. Literally everything that you do in your business needs an SOP. Because when you go to hire someone, your first hire, or your second or your third or fourth or whoever, whenever you hire someone, if you have a set of, this is how we do what we do, here's the playbook to our business, and here's the software that powers us to do business, they are set up for success. Of course, there's nurturing, and of course, there is more to it than just handing over the reins of those two things. But those two things, paired with you nurturing that employee and loving that employee and really guiding them on the path and training, those are going to be their secret sauce to success in being an employee of yours. And so I can operate my business and the massive amount of events and massive amount of revenue that we do and for human beings because we train them super well. We nurture our employees and we give them this step-by-step thing so that when they have a question of how do I edit this podcast, or how do I respond to this specific email from a client, or how do I do this, I can either tell them really quick if it's a quick answer, I can say, hey, that's in the SOP in this certain spot, which means I have to memorize what's in our SOPs and where to find it. But having a table of contents for that is super helpful. Having it labeled by like internal sales, outside sales, network. Here's how you do networking. Here's how you load a truck. Here's how you handle a accident, an automobile accident. If your truck gets in an automobile accident, here's how we handle that. If you are missing product at an event, here's how we handle that. If you have weather issues that come up, here in Texas happens often, here's how we handle that. And so having software, Goodshuffle Pro, and SOPs, that is the secret sauce, that is the magic to being successful in business. If you don't take anything I say from today, except for this one thing, take it and apply it as soon as possible. If you need a head start on your SOPs, I actually sell our SOP bundle on our website. Brooke is in the chat. Brooke, do you mind putting the link to that in there? That'd be awesome. But you can get all of those SOPs and not have to make them up as you go, like we did, and then perfected them to be able to sell to you.
That's awesome. And, you know, I think one question that comes to mind is like, okay, did you just like take one day, you know, last year to like do everything? Has this been a work in progress? Like, you know, you hear the phrase all the time, progress, not perfection, but events people are known to be perfectionists. So like,
Yeah.
Practically speaking, how does this work? Right? Like, do you just get out of bed tomorrow and like start doing this? Do you need to have a plan for your plan? Like, lay the groundwork a little bit to give some kind of confidence of like, what does that first step look like?
Yeah, of course. Well, I think having a plan of attack of how do you want to get to this point is really important. If you can't plan ahead in baby steps, then having this really big goal of I want to have SOPs in my business is going to feel overwhelming and daunting, and you're not going to want to do it in the first place. And so that's super important to start with, is little baby steps. We have an internal thing called a roadmap, which I'm sure we have somewhere if someone wants to copy it, but it literally is like 3 baby steps or 3 medium to baby size steps to get you to a smaller goal. And so if your step is, I want to have SOPs for my entire sales team, which I would say that's probably one of the best places to start because that's your revenue generator, is I want to have SOPs for my sales team. Then what are some baby steps you need to do? Well, the first is probably look at what is your current process, if you have a process. And you might think, well, I don't have a process, I just do it. Well, you have a process. It might be small or it might not be super intentional, but you have some sort of a process. So where are you at now? Write it down. And then let's think about it from the client's perspective. How can you make it better? And how do you make it better from your internal perspective? Probably integrating Goodshuffle Pro if you don't already have it. And then how do we get it down on paper and get it into practice? Well, you're probably going to have to video record yourself doing some things on Goodshuffle Pro. You're probably going to have to write some email templates of how do you communicate, maybe some phone scripts of how you talk to your clients over the phone. So you're going to have to start compiling these things. But if you start here of what am I currently doing, it's better to start there than thinking, well, I have to get all of my SOPs by tomorrow. No, you need to start here and then work your way up and then work your way up. And each of those tasks is starting where you're at and then looking internally and externally and then putting it on paper. Each one has a little bit of tasks associated with it. And so under those tasks, you might say, well, let me go cull through all of the emails that I've done in the last 2 months to my sales clients. That would be part of task number 1. And then from there, I'm going to then look at my phone logs. How often do I call my clients in the sales process? Okay, and then how do I get them to book? Like that could be your task list for that very small baby step, which then gives you the confidence to move into the next step, which gives you the confidence to move into the next step. And you've completed that portion of your SOP mountain that you're climbing. It is a lot of work. I will be completely honest with you. It is a lot of work to get your software and your SOPs working for you. But I guarantee you, as soon as you get that done, and even in the midst of you getting it done, your business will run for you. Meaning you don't have to baby step it. You don't have to do every single little thing because you're going to have this tools to be able to go through and do it. Goodshuffle Pro is super easy because it's super easy to enter your stuff and get everything ready to go because they've made it super easy for that. And SOPs might seem daunting, but we've got a solution for you. So it doesn't have to feel so daunting. And so part of this process, we didn't just wake up one night and say, hey, we're going to do SOPs tomorrow and we're going to do, all these things tomorrow. No, it was a process. We had to take months and months and months to start putting these things into place because if you know us as a business, we're very intentional with every single thing that we do. And so we wanted to look at every single piece of our SOP and make sure we were doing it the best we humanly possibly could. And so it took us a long time to get there. And then guess what? Every single year, we look at it again. And every single really big thing that happens in our industry, AKA COVID, or AKA last minute timing of events right now, we'll go back through those when needed and say, okay, how does this need to adjust based on the current circumstances of our business? And so there's going to be times that are outside of your normal once a year, re-looking at your SOPs that you might have to come back to these, but they evolve and they become better, again, better than yesterday than they were the day before because we're constantly going through them and making sure that they're the best that they can be.
Well, and I'd imagine, right, it never gets easier to do that, right? Like the busier you get, the bigger you grow, it's only, you're only going to have to get more systems in place the bigger you get. So if you're starting these as you're starting your business, right, you have less of them to put in place. If you had, if you had access to software year 1 instead of year 5, right, year 5 might have looked a little bit, different. And
if I had SOPs from the time that I started my business, or even year 3 of my business versus year 7 of my business,
right,
my business would have been able to accomplish way more than it does right now. But we were in a time period, like a lot of other rental companies are in a time period of we just didn't know better. We were literally making it up as we went. Mm-hmm. And a lot of companies are still doing that. And you kind of have to, because you can't go to college for this. You can't go get a degree for the rental community. You can't go do school for this. The closest thing you can get is online resources, and that's about it. And so it would have been a game changer if we had this before. But just because I'm at this point in business and I have probably at least 30 SOPs for the business, it doesn't mean that you need 30 SOPs. You might need 1 or 2 right now, and then next year you might add another 1 or 2, and the next year might add 5 more, and the next year might add 2 more. You're going to constantly be growing in your business because your business is at a different point than my business is. And every business is at a different point. There's certainly companies that are bigger than mine, 100%, but their SOPs look different than mine do because they're at a different stage in their business.
It sounds like you're constantly thinking about, how are we paving the way to grow? Yes. And, when I talk to clients, I feel for folks because it's like, I don't want to say folks are scared to grow, but it's like, okay, well, what happens when that, I get to that point? And it's like, y'all started a business to make money, to grow, to like, be successful. And these frameworks, these SOPs, as you grow and scale, as you have great software, hint, hint, right? Like you can make those transitions a little bit easier and it's a little bit smoother, it sounds like. So you're not having to, come up with everything on the fly. You've got at least some rails on either side keeping you in place.
Yes, exactly.
And I imagine when we talk about all of these different transition periods, right? Whether we're ramping up to be in just craziness that way, whether we have to respond to local mandates and slow back down, having your team and getting them on the same page as you is really important. So can you talk a little bit about who supports you? How have you curated the right people in your workplace, knowing that there's this huge labor shortage in our industry, which I think somebody told me was going to be a problem till like 2027. What are some of the concrete, pieces of advice that you can give on the hiring front?
Yeah, of course. I think it's important to have people who are right on your team. So the people who aren't going to leave you in a lurch of you need this person on your team. The main people for that is going to be your delivery service people, your event people who are on site doing those things, and your sales team. Those are super important to run your business. Not that anyone else is, but those are really important. And so if you can set up your hiring process and your training process in a way that retains them and keeps them is super important. And then thinking ahead, planning ahead for those times that you might not have someone to be there for a delivery for you. We certainly thought about this prior to the 2020 and 2021 craziness, and we're having to put that into practice now. And so part of one of those SOPs is how do we get someone if we're short staffed? Well, to do that, you might have to ask friends, or you ask some family members, or you ask a temp agency or a moving company or a fire department or a police department, thinking outside the box. How do we get last minute people to help us out? And certainly we are in a spot 100% with all the events booking, especially last minute, that we are waiting to have people. We're like, oh my gosh, we have a massive order this weekend and we need 4 guys on staff for it and we only have 3. Like, how on earth are we going to have this happen? We have some people in our back pocket that aren't necessarily full-time staff or part-time staff, but they're as needed when we need them because we've built that up. We planned ahead for that in our SOP. We thought about those things. What are some things that could get in our way in the future and how do we overcome those? And so thinking ahead on that. If you are not in a season right now that is crazy busy, like we are right now, plan ahead because it's going to get crazy and you're going to be short-staffed. So how can you already preemptively think, hey, if I am last minute needing someone, who do I call? Who do I call? Something that we have found super helpful is when we can lean on our rental community locally here. I've built up a community on Facebook group called Rental Pro Community, but we also have a local community of rental companies that will call up each other and say, hey, do you have like one person that you can spare this weekend? Because obviously they know the nature of the job. And sometimes they can pull through and give us someone, and sometimes they can't, and that's okay. Okay, what's your next step? Are you going to go to a fire department and see if they have any people? Because typically firemen, they've got the muscles. We need those. Or they are used to the late nights, which we also need those. Musicians are a great place to go. Having some sort of a hiring bonus or having some sort of a benefit or an incentive for them to come and work for you is really important. We charge a late night fee for anything that is after 10 p.m. and that late night fee goes directly to our staff and it's split between the entire team that does that late night pickup. We also have an early morning. So if it's a 6 a.m. delivery or 5 a.m. delivery, something before 8 a.m., they also split that early morning fee. And so having certain incentives that say, hey, if you're going to work for us late at night, just so you know, you're going to make extra money on top of your hourly wage. And so that's part of incentivizing them to work that late and the benefits of working here. And so thinking through
I
those.
love that idea.
Yeah, it's I can't remember. We've been doing it for a long time. We may have heard someone else like doing something like that or whatever and just tweaked it in a way that worked for our business. But yeah, just incentivizing them, having backup plans and backup plans to the backup plans when you need short-staffed people is really important. My staff here and my family and friends know that I am the queen of plans A, B, C, and D, and sometimes E and F as well. Like I always have something else in my back pocket. And that's come from being in business for 10 years. You always have to plan ahead for something else.
That is, I mean, so true. And I think, when you talk about laying the groundwork, right, for enabling folks on your team to know what to do and then incentivizing them to do those things, that's when employees keep, showing up, right? I think employee retention and making sure that you're keeping the team that's good to you. Part of like communicating those SOPs is, yeah, you as a business owner get to know like what plans A, B, and C are. But it's also, you talk about the trust bridge with your clients. It's also this trust bridge with your team.
Yes.
And you are clearly communicating, here are my expectations. I'm a firm believer that almost all disagreements, disappointments, whatever, result from unclear expectations. And so you have set those with your team and set them up for success. And then you've got, great software and tools and resources so that they can really,
Yes.
perform and rise to the occasion.
Right. Well, there's plenty of places that you can go look at. If something goes wrong, what is the reason why it went wrong? There's plenty of places that teach you that it's either a hands, head, or a heart problem. They either head knowledge, don't have the knowledge to overcome whatever issue they're dealing with or frustration they're dealing with. They don't have the hands, the tools, the way to do something like software or a specific actual tool or a truck or something like. They don't have the resources to complete whatever they're trying to do or overcome the issue, or it's a heart problem. They just don't care about it, or they're not in it. And so if we can overcome these 3 different issues by being an awesome employer, then we won't ever have really that much interaction that's frustrating or hard. Certainly, we are humans, and there is going to be frustrating things that happen because we're humans. We are not perfect machines. However, if we can overcome a lot of those preemptively by giving them the knowledge, the SOPs, by giving them the resources, Goodshuffle Pro and actual, things to do your job, and then giving them the gratitude and the care and the love for your employees, you're going to overcome that head, hands, and heart issues that come with every frustrating thing, every issue, everything that could go wrong.
Oh, I love that so much. And as we're going to wrap up here, we are going to both share and send out some resources along, with this recording to both people who are attending and some folks who are going to watch the recording after, so that they have, the tools to address those, to build the business, to build the team. I think you've offered some really great advice today, Cam, and I really appreciate your time with us. Before we close out, do you mind doing a little bit of a rapid fire kind of session with us?
Of course.
Awesome. We have done some like polls with our users lately about some trends and things in the industry. And so we want to get, your 2 cents as an industry leader here as well.
Of course.
So what are the top trends that you are expecting in 2022?
Yeah, so one thing that I am definitely expecting is these last minute turnaround times that we're experiencing right now, which you and I were talking about before we started this webinar. Our last minute time frame is anywhere from hours to days before the event actually is happening. And I expect that to be happening in next year as well. And so that also means that you have to go back and look at how do you do the thing that you do and how can we prep and really plan ahead for these last minute timeframes. I am hopeful and expecting them to be a little bit longer of lead times than hours and days. However, they're not going to be months and years like we have typically been used to back in 2019 and before that. And so quick turnaround times, I think, is definitely going to continue to happen for next year. I think more intentional places at the event is going to be important. And so if you think of your inventory and how those can be served, think about areas like gift areas at a corporate conference, or intimate lounge areas for intimate conversations, or VIP areas, or things like that. How do you then get the inventory that speaks to that? Do you need shelving for your gift areas? Do you need specific lounge furniture for those VIP areas? Is there certain things, like for escort cards, for example, for venues or for weddings? Is there certain ways that you can think outside the box that make it a more intimate and memorable thing, like a champagne wall that's not your typical boxwood champagne wall? Like, how can you think outside the box and create more unique inventory, clean lined inventory, and really speak to those more intentional locations at the event itself and the inventory that people need for that? And then something that is definitely going to continue to trend, and it's going to get smarter and more techy as the world evolves in the years to come, is having software that is at the tip of your fingertips and easier to access. People don't have time to print out, scan, email back, all those things for payment and for contracts. And so if you can make it as easy as possible, you're overcoming one of those trust bridges that they are having, because they're busy just like you are. And so the less work you can do on their front is the better. And so Goodshuffle Pro is awesome at that stuff.
And you even have it integrated with your website, right? So
We
even
do.
before we're getting to the contracting phase, right? Clients, if you're working with a late night owl or a mom that needs to get things done before the
Yep.
kids are up, like folks can go to your website and put together, I need this, this, and this, and send it right your way.
Yeah, exactly. They can essentially pre-book or pre-plan what they want from our inventory, and then we can send them a quote real quick within
Awesome.
hours, or depending on what time that they do it, but hopefully within hours of them inquiring.
Well, and one thing I wanted to make sure that we mentioned as far as that, quick turnaround, right, with those last minute requests, is you mentioned that you charge a premium for that, right? So
Yeah.
being able to respond quickly does come with an extra price tag. Can you talk through a little bit? Because sometimes there's some hesitancy to charge more for those clients.
Yeah, of course. So the last minute turnaround times that we're getting right now, we started applying this, probably a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, but really put it more into effect. It was a little bit more, if we wanted to charge it or we wanted to waive it back then, but right now everything is last minute. And so we have this fee called a quick turnaround fee, and it's 20% of your entire order. And so depending on your size of your order, it could be a substantial fee. And we explain to our clients, if they ask about it, hey, we charge this fee because we're working with a shorter time frame to collect all those logistics, your timelines, your layouts, your load in and load out times. All of this information is now having a shorter time frame. And so we're going to have pause on some other really important work as well to attend to your event, which is all well and good. We love doing that. We're excited about your event, but we do have to charge for that. So that's what we charge for it.
I love that. That client is disrupting SOPs elsewhere, right? So
Yes,
gotta
exactly.
make sure that if you're going to disrupt your process, that you're at least benefiting from it in some way.
Yes, exactly.
How do you use the downtime over the holidays to prep for the new year?
Yes. So most of my team, unless we have an event or unless someone really wants to work, we usually take Christmas break off. And we started doing this a couple of years ago, but we really try to knock out as much as humanly possible before the holidays even begin. Episode 30 or 85 on our podcast actually talks all about how we prep for the end of the year so that we can take that time off. And so there's some certain things that you do have to talk about in your business and look at and review before you get to January. Things like taxes for the next year, things like W-2s for your employees, budgeting, the marketing plans, like all of that has to be discussed one way or the other. And so if you can prep for that before December, we try for whatever day is dismissal for school, because I've got kids and there's not much work happening when I've got my kids at home. So if we can prep for that as much as possible before break, then it gives us the ease of going into Christmas break without the worry of, oh my gosh, I have to do this as soon as school gets back in session. And then you're going into next year being stressed and overwhelmed because you didn't get it done before. So We actually take it off as much as we can.
Love that. So if you have a smaller marketing budget, I assume like thinking about plans to market is maybe something on the list for before the new year. What are top things to spend on?
Yes. So if you have a smaller marketing budget, which is all well and good, we had a smaller budget last year because of 2020 and the dumpster fire it was. The few things that I would really highly recommend on, especially going into a new year, is a website that converts. So really look at the copy on your website, an integration that has a wish list on your website. At least have a website. I can't even tell you the amount of clients and students that I get to talk to that don't have a website yet. They do all their business through social media, which I'm sure works just fine, but how much better could it work if you had a website? The other thing I would recommend is shoots for your brand that produces quality content. And so having a image library that you can pull from and do your planning ahead is really important. We use Planoly for all of our social media posting. And so it's been super helpful for us. Brooke, if you want to put the link for our Planoly, it gives people a little discount for getting on Planoly, but saves us a ton of time. It's like, I think $9 a month. It's super cheap. So very small marketing budget on that. And then next year, you may have seen it from this year and last year, but moving into next year, video reels and TikToks, like the short digestible video content is super important. I remember about 5 years ago, they said, then the next 5 years, most of your social media is going to be videos and not photos. And I was like, nuh-uh, it's still going to be photos. Like everyone loves photos. Now, if I get on Instagram, almost everything is a video. And I'm like, okay, I believe you now. So focusing on the short digestible videos or even movable images like GIFs and stuff. I'm not super techie, so I don't know all the like technical terms to these, but having those short little movement and videos is super important going into next year. And then free marketing like networking or social media or Facebook groups or things like that is really important.
Awesome. What are your top tools that you're using to keep you and your team organized?
Yes, so Goodshuffle Pro, of course, is our number one. And that combined with Asana and Slack is really important as well. Asana keeps us on track for tasks, not only client-wise, but business-wise as a whole. Our marketing is on Asana. Our communication as far as things that we need to get done is on Asana. And then Slack is a free tool that we use internally as well. It's a communication tool. I think you guys use it as well. Where you can communicate outside of email, text, phone, all that. And you can put all of your communication there, create different channels of your conversation topics and things like that. So Goodshuffle Pro, Asana, and Slack is our like key to success when it comes to the softwares and the things to keep your team aligned.
Cool. And what about favorite resources for keeping up with trends and industry insights?
Yes. So any event type of emails, like Goodshuffle Pro puts out an awesome one every week. I actually just read Colin's one this morning. So fun. I love Colin.
Yes.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Dash has a great one. NACE, which is National Association of Catering and Events. Goodshuffle Pro is a sponsor of them. I'm also a member, longtime member, and used to be a board member for 3 years of NACE. Great association. Highly recommend it. The Association of American Rental Pros is a great resource to get content from. Facebook groups. We've got a Facebook group called Rental Pro Community, but there's also a ton of other Facebook groups that are industry specific, not just rental specific, that will help kind of give you insight to what the industry as a whole is doing and feeling. And then Party Slate is a great place to get trends from. We love looking at Party Slate when we just need a boost of an idea generator.
Love that. Love that. And as we're forming our SOPs and shopping software for the new year, what are some questions that folks should have front of mind going through that process?
Yes. So when you're looking at software, which we teach this on our podcast and online course as well, make a pros and cons list for yourself when it comes to your software. So what is something that you need on your software? What are some things that it's not the best thing on the software, but I'll deal with it anyways. What is your deal breakers? Like, what do you need to have in a software before you go ahead and do a software? Is it online payments and contracts that are online? Is it wish lists that integrate with your software or your website? Is it route planning? Is it There's so many different factors that could be your deal breakers. Like I have to have these before I have a software, and Goodshuffle Pro checks all of our deal breakers. So
what were they? Do you mind asking? What were your deal breakers?
Online payments and contracts were a deal breaker for sure. Our software company before that didn't have like the online signatures. They had online payments, but not online signatures, which was super important to us. Because we weren't getting people booking because they were like, I have to print it out and sign it and scan it and email back. I'm like, yes, I'm sorry. Wish list is super important. That's a deal breaker, 100%. If you don't have a wish list on your website, it's really hard for people to tell you what they want without spending hours between emails and phones trying to figure out, how you can get booked. And so that, I mean, gosh, we get an inquiry and that has a wish list. It takes us 2 minutes to put something together versus sitting on the phone, which of course there's going to be clients who want to talk to you on the phone and don't want to do the wish list, of course, but the majority of them use the wish list. So that was really important to us. And then understanding, like on the dashboard of Goodshuffle Pro, understanding what's going on in the next week or 2 weeks when it comes to events. Who's doing low call, who's doing delivery, what days are they going out, how long is the inventory going to be out, and then not double booking things. So having some sort of a thing that allows you not to double book or be notified if something is double booked was really important, because otherwise we'd have to go back through all the orders and be like, oh crap, I can't do that now because it's already booked on someone else's and I didn't realize that. And so that was really important to us.
Awesome. Okay, final round of questions. These are going to be so snappy.
Yes.
Do you think modern or classic will be more on trend next year?
Honestly, I think both. Depends on the type of event. Wedding, I think it's going to move more classic with a touch of modern. And corporate's going to be super modern. And then I think mid-century modern is going to be in trend. That kind of started the trend before the pandemic, and I think it's going to come back and keep going.
Cool. Do you think clients will continue to want like mini or smaller events, or are we going back to pre-pandemic era, large scale, huge events?
I think based on the cities and their guidance and regulations and all that, we do have to respect those things. But if the cities allow it, I believe that large events are going to happen again in 2022, maybe towards the latter side of 2022, but definitely in 2023. For example, we do a ton of corporate, like I'm talking 10,000 plus people in attendance corporate. And those companies have already told us that as soon as their companies are allowing it, they're doing the massive events again because they missed that time with their employees and with their clients and all of that. And so they're coming back. Just give it a minute, but they're coming back.
What's the number one thing you're focusing on in 2022 to grow your business?
So we're focusing on more intentional growth, not necessarily more quantity of events, but larger scale and bigger logistics and design focused events. And so we want the big events like 10,000 plus people events, which is a big thing to take on. And we've done a handful, more than a handful. We've done a few handfuls of them over the years, and we really have grown to really love those. It's a lot of stress on your team, and it's a lot of work on the front end, back end, and in the middle of it. But perfecting it and getting really good at it is something that's really intentional for our team.
Going to need a lot more team to pull those events off.
Yes.
Focusing on employee retention or new hiring?
Yeah, exactly. I believe both are equally important. You really have to hire the right people. And so being intentional with that process is really important. We have another podcast episode, all about the hiring process, which is a 4-step process. And I think it's really important to focus on your hiring. But I also think it's equally important to focus on the training and retention of your employees as well. And making them feel valued and trained is really important. And that's through softwares and SOPs and benefits to being on your team and all of that. So, which we talked about earlier.
Team both. Love that.
Yes.
Okay. Cam, anything else that you want to share? I mean, we've covered, a lot today.
Yes. I mean, I could be here for hours talking to y'all all about rental companies. It's one of my favorite topics, clearly. But this has been super fun. I've loved seeing the people showing up today. And I hope that we can continue to serve you guys and give you the best resources and be an ear to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for opening it up to us today. For all those attending live, thank you, thank you, thank you. For anyone watching the recording, we're going to have links to all the resources that we talked about today. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. If you have any questions for Cam or for me, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me. I'm Mallory at goodshufflepro.com, and Cam is at
Cam at therender.co.
Perfect. Awesome, Cam. Well, I hope you have a really great rest of your day and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yes, thanks so much.